Your best people aren't the problem. The system you've tolerated is. Every founder watching this has fired someone hoping it will fix their culture. It didn't. Because toxic culture doesn't come from bad people. It comes from what you allow to persist. Misalignment, inconsistent standards, quiet resignment. The moment you excuse underperformance or avoid a hard conversation, you're not protecting your team, you're engineering decay. By the end of this video, you'll understand the exact diagnostics framework I use with clients to surface the hidden cracks in their culture before they lose their people. This isn't a survey, it's a structural assessment that reveals where your leadership has created the conditions for toxic culture to take root. Here's what's at stake. You've built something real. You've got capable people. But you're watching them struggle inside a system that doesn't support them. And you know it's your responsibility. The weight you're carrying? That's not just stress. That's the cost of misalignment you've been avoiding addressing. I've worked with dozens of founders who thought they had a people problem. They'd bring me in, ready to fire someone, and 9 times out of 10, the person wasn't the issue. The issue was that the leader had allowed 2 different standards to exist in the same organization. One for high performers, one for everyone else. And that gap, that's where toxic culture grows. Peter Drucker said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Every founder nods when they hear that. But what that phrase actually means is this: culture determines execution capability. If your culture is misaligned, your strategy won't survive contact with reality. This diagnostics helps you see exactly where those misalignments are hidden. Point number 1. Your culture is a ship on a voyage, and you need to know if it's seaworthy before the storm hits. You wouldn't set sail without checking your hull. So why do leaders treat culture like it's just holding together on its own? Culture isn't perks or personality, it's whether your organization can execute under pressure. I use a maritime metaphor with clients. Your culture is a ship. In calm seas, every ship looks strong. The deck is clean, the sails are up, everyone's pulling in the same direction. But the real test comes in a storm. And the problem most founders have is they don't realize their ship is taking on water until they're already losing their best people. Here's the deal. A ship's power doesn't come from its wood or the canvas. It comes from the unified spirit of its crew, their shared purpose and synchronized effort. When that's intact, your organization feels alive. It moves with intention. People know their role. They trust the captain. They pull together when it gets rough. But when that spirit breaks, you're just a collection of planks adrift. No amount of motivational speeches or pizza Fridays will fix it. The vessel has reverted to lifeless materials, tossed by the waves instead of navigating through them. This diagnostics I'm about to walk you through, it's like walking the deck from stem to stern, checking every structural element before you hit rough waters. Because here's the truth, you can't fix what you can't see. And most leaders look at symptoms, turnover, low morale, missed deadlines, instead of the structural cracks causing them. I worked with a CEO who kept talking about engagement, brought in consultants, ran surveys, launched initiatives. Nothing moved the needle. When we finally did the diagnostics, the issue wasn't engagement, it was trust. His leadership team didn't believe decisions would stick. They'd seen him reverse course too many times based on who had his ear that week. So they stopped investing emotional energy into outcomes they couldn't control. That's not a motivation problem, that's a structural problem. The crew has lost faith that the captain knew where the ship was going. And no amount of engagement survey was going to fix that. If your culture feels off, but you can't pinpoint why, it's because you're looking at symptoms instead of structure. You need a diagnostics that reveals the actual cracks in the hull, not surface level morale issues. The foundation misalignments that make everything else unstable. That's what this framework does. It gives you X-ray vision into the 4 structural elements that determine whether your culture thrives or decays. And once you see where the cracks are, you know exactly where to focus. Point number 2. There are 4 structural cornerstones that determine whether your culture thrives or decays. Culture doesn't collapse randomly. It fails in 4 specific places, and most leaders don't know where to look. The diagnostic is built on what I call the 4 cornerstones of culture. They aren't aspirational concepts, they're structural elements. Think of them as the 4 load-bearing walls of your organization. If one cracks, the entire structure becomes unstable. Here's how it breaks down. Vision is your North Star. It's the compelling destination that inspires the journey. If your team can't articulate why the company exists beyond making money, your vision is broken. And I don't mean they can't recite the mission statement. I mean they can't connect their daily decisions to a larger purpose that matters. Mission is the daily voyage. It's the focused work required to move toward that destination. If departments are competing instead of collaborating, if people feel busy but not productive, if every day is firefighting instead of forward progress, your mission is fractured. You have a destination, but no coordinated effort to get there. Values are the captain's code. They are the non-negotiable behavior that defines how the crew treats each other. If you tolerate a brilliant jerk, if the unwritten rules contradict what's on the wall, if your people don't feel safe challenging bad ideas, your values are just words, and your best people know it. Human element is the crew. It's whether you have the right people with the right character for this specific voyage. If your hiring process screens for skills but not cultural fit, your top performers see no path for growth. If people are quietly quitting while still collecting paychecks, you've brought the wrong crew on board, or you've broken the crew you had. Here's the insight most founders miss. These 4 cornerstones are structural. When one cracks, the entire ship becomes unstable. And that crack always shows up in predictable patterns. I worked with a CEO who had a perfect vision statement. It was inspiring, well written, had it framed in the lobby, referred to it in all hands meetings. But when I interviewed his leadership team separately, none of them could explain how their daily decisions connected to it. The vision existed in theory, but wasn't operationalized. That's a crack in Cornerstone 1, and it was creating drift across the entire organization. We didn't rewrite the vision. We made it operational. We defined what living the vision looked like in a hiring decision, in a price conversation, in a conflict between departments. Within 60 days, the leadership team could articulate not just where the ship was going, but how their rowing mattered. Alignment returned, not because we inspired them, because we gave them clarity. If your culture feels misaligned, it's not vague. It's failing in one of these 4 specific areas. The diagnostic surfaces exactly where. And once you see the pattern, you stop wasting energy trying to fix everything at once. You patch the biggest leak first. Point number 3. This isn't a test you pass or fail. It's a diagnostic that reveals where your ship is taking on water. Stop looking for a cultural score. Start looking for the leaks that are quietly sinking your ship. The Culture Health and Toxicity assessment uses a 1 to 5 rating scale for each cornerstone. But the final number doesn't matter. What matters is the pattern. Where are the low scores concentrated? Where's the gap between how you perceive your culture and the team experiences it? That's where the real work lives. A ship can look strong in calm harbors, but its true seaworthiness is only revealed in a storm. This assessment shows you the conditions of your hull before you hit the rough seas. Here's how the rating works. 5 means ship shape and sailing, an area of strength. The crew knows their destination, their roles matter, and the standards are real. 4 means seaworthy but leaking, generally solid, but with noticeable inconsistencies that need patching. You're not in danger yet, but your best people are starting to feel the friction. 3 means adrift and taking on water, a significant problem. You lack direction and your integrity is compromised. You're vulnerable to any external shock. 2 means in a storm and lost compass. High alert. External pressure is meeting internal dysfunction, creating a dangerous and volatile situation. Your crew is confused and exhausted. 1 means sinking or mutiny. Active crisis. Total failure is imminent or already happening. The spirit of the crew has been exhausted. Here's what most leaders get wrong. They want to improve everything at once. They see low scores across the board and panic, but that's not how structural repair works. You don't try to patch every leak simultaneously. You fix the biggest one first, the one that's letting in the most water, the one that threatens the integrity of the entire vessel. I had a client whose entire leadership team evaluated their mission, Cornerstone 2, as a 2 or 3, but they rated vision as a 5. That told me the problem wasn't inspiration, it was execution. They had a clear destination, but no coordinated daily work to get there. Departments were pulling in different directions. Priorities shifted weekly, people felt busy but not productive. We didn't touch vision. We focused exclusively on operational alignment, clarifying roles, eliminating competing priorities, creating accountability for cross-functional collaboration. Within 60 days, their mission score went from 2 to a 4. Same team, different system. That's the power of pattern recognition. When you see where your cracks are, you stop guessing and you start repairing. You don't waste energy on the parts of the ship that are solid. You focus on what's actually breaking. If you're trying to fix culture everywhere at once, you're wasting energy. The diagnostic shows you exactly where to focus first. And that focus, that's what creates momentum. Because when your team sees you're addressing the real problem, not the surface symptoms, but the actual structural crack, they start to believe the system can change. Point number 4. There are 3 places where culture typically breaks, and leaders almost always miss them. Your culture isn't broken everywhere. It's broken in 3 predictable places, and you've been looking right past them. After running this diagnostic with dozens of organizations, I've found that toxic culture almost always shows up in 3 specific failure modes. If you know what you're looking for, you can catch the decay before it comes terminal. Failure mode 1, the brilliant jerk. You have a high performer who delivers results but violates your stated values. And you tolerate it because you're afraid of losing their output. Maybe they're your top salesperson. Maybe they're the engineer who knows the code base better than anyone. Maybe they're the executive who's been there since the beginning. Your team sees this, and the moment they do, they learn that your values are conditional. Performance buys you a pass. Rules don't apply to everyone equally, and that's when the best people start quietly interviewing. This always shows up as a low score in the brilliant jerk test question. A high-performing employee who violates the company's values would be corrected or removed, not tolerated for their results. If you rated that as a 3 or below, your culture is poisoned at the root. Because here's the deal. You don't get to pick or choose when your values matter. Either they're real or they're not. And if they're not real for the high performer, they're not real for anyone. Failure mode 2, the avoided conversation. There's a conversation that you've been avoiding with a leader who's undermining your meetings, with a capable person who's becoming inconsistent, with the entitled high performer who stopped following the process. You know the conversation I'm talking about. You've rehearsed it in your head. You've told yourself you'll have it after the quarter or when things settle down. But things never settle down, and meanwhile, the avoidance is sending a message. The standard isn't real. This shows up in the question, people feel safe to respectfully challenge an idea or voice a concern to leadership without fear of retribution. If your team rated that low but you rated it high, you have a blind spot. Your team knows that hard conversations don't happen. They've watched you avoid conflict to keep the peace. They've learned that bringing you problems gets them nothing but discomfort. So they stop trying. And here's what's killing me about this. Most of the time, the person you're avoiding the conversation with already knows they're the problem. They're waiting for you to address it. And when you don't, they lose respect for you too. Failure mode 3, the vision execution gap. Your vision is inspiring, but your team can't connect their daily work to it. They know where the ship is going, but they don't know if their rowing matters. This shows up when vision scores high, but mission scores low. It means you have a destination, but no operational alignment to get there. I worked with a founder who had an incredible vision. His team loved it. They'd repeat it back to me in interviews. But when I asked them, what would change about your job tomorrow if you were perfectly aligned with that vision? They couldn't answer. The vision was motivational, but it wasn't operational. It existed in all hands meetings and on the website, but it didn't translate into daily decisions, priorities, or trade-offs. That gap was killing execution, because when people can't see how their work connects to the destination, they default to this self-preservation. They do what's safe, what's measurable, what won't get them into trouble, and the bold, risky, vision-aligned work, it doesn't happen. Your culture isn't randomly broken. It's failing in one of these 3 predictable ways. The diagnostic surfaces which one applies to you, so you can stop guessing and start fixing. Point number 5. The assessment you fill out alone is useful. The conversation that happens when your leadership team compares their answers is where the real work begins. You think you know where your culture is broken. Then your leadership team fills out the same assessment, and you realize you've been seeing completely different ships. The Culture Health and Toxicity assessment is designed to be completed individually first, and then discussed as a leadership team. Here's why. The gap between how the leaders perceive the culture reveal the hidden fractures. If you rate people feel safe to voice concerns as a 5, but your VP rates it as a 2, that's not a difference of opinion. That's a structural misalignment in how psychological safety actually works in your organization. You think people speak up. They know they don't. And that gap, that's where the real problem lives. I call this the first port of call meeting. After everyone completes their assessment, you schedule a 1-hour meeting with one agenda item. Each person share the one question that gave them the most pause or concern. You're not solving anything in this meeting. You're creating a shared, honest understanding of the ship's condition. I facilitated this with a leadership team where the CEO rated their value alignment as a 5 across the board. He genuinely believed that the culture was strong. The values were clear. People knew what mattered. But when we went around the table, 3 of his 4 VPs rated the brilliant jerk test as a 2. The conversation that followed was uncomfortable. Turns out there was a senior leader everyone knew was toxic, sharp with the team, dismissive in meetings, unwilling to collaborate. But no one thought the CEO would address it because the person had been there since the beginning. They built half the company together, so the team had quietly accepted that this was just how it was going to be, and they lost faith in the system. The CEO had no idea. He thought people were being sensitive. He didn't realize his tolerance of one person's behavior had sent a message to the entire organization. Values only apply when they're convenient. We had the hard conversation that week. The toxic leader was put on a performance plan with clear behavioral standards. He either fixed it or he was out. No exceptions. No grace period based on the tenure. The standard applied to everyone, including him. He chose to fix it, and the team's respect for the culture was restored within 30 days. Not because we inspired them, because we showed them the system was real. The diagnostic doesn't just show you where the cracks are. It forces the conversation that you've been avoiding. And that's where culture actually changes, in the leadership team's willingness to face the truth together. Point number 6. Once you see where the cracks are, here's exactly what to do next. Insight without action is just trivia. Here's the exact repair plan based on where your ship is leaking. The assessment results fall into 5 categories, each with a specific action plan. If you're mostly 5s, ship shape and sailing, your culture is a powerful asset. The crew is aligned, the standards are real, the ship moves with purpose. The danger now is complacency. Every strong culture decays if leadership stops reinforcing what made them strong. Your action? Publicly reinforce the behavior that built this. Celebrate your culture champions. Use the diagnostics quarterly as a preventive maintenance. Stay vigilant, because the moment you stop paying attention, the leaks start. If you're mostly 4s, seaworthy but leaking, your ship's hull is sound, but you've got leaks. These inconsistencies frustrate your people. They see the gap between what you say and what you tolerate, and they're getting tired of bailing water. Your action? Prioritize 2 to 3 low-scoring questions. Close the say-do gap. Ensure the values you praise are the ones you actually reward. If you have a brilliant jerk, address them now. Not next quarter, now. Your best people are watching. If you're mostly 3s, adrift and taking on water, this is a significant liability. You lack direction and your integrity is compromised. You're vulnerable to any external shock. A market shift, a key resignation, a competitor move. Your action? Sound the alarm with leadership. Recommit to your vision immediately. Show decisive leadership by making 1 or 2 hard, visible corrections to prove you're serious. The crew needs to see you're willing to fix what's broken. If you're mostly 2s, in a storm and lost compass, you're in high alert. Fractured crew, external pressure, internal chaos, your best people are either checking out or actively looking for the exits. Your action? Steady the helm with calm, visible leadership. Simplify the mission to 1 or 2 immediate critical objectives. Reestablish your North Star and make all decisions point in that direction. Overcommunicate with clarity and confidence. Your crew is exhausted and confused. They need to know you have control of the ship. If you're mostly 1s, sinking or mutiny, this is a code red. Active crisis. The spirit of the crew has been exhausted. Total organizational failure is imminent or already happening. Your action? Reestablish the vision immediately. Give the remaining crew a reason to believe. Publicly declare non-negotiable values. Stop the bleeding by addressing primary toxicity sources without hesitation. No second chances, no grace period. The ship is going down if you don't act now. The diagnostic doesn't just tell you what's wrong. It tells you exactly what to do next based on the severity and the location of the damage. That's the difference between a useful insight and a structural repair plan. If you're watching this and realizing your culture has cracks you've been avoiding, you're not alone. I work with founders who've built something real, but know their system isn't built to sustain it. The Culture Health and Toxicity assessment I walked you through in this video, it's free. You can take it right now. MannyPalachuk.com/culture-assessment. It'll take you 15 minutes to complete, and you'll immediately see where your ship is leaking. If you want help interpreting the results and building a repair plan, let's talk. Links in the description. Okay, let's run this down. Culture isn't perks or personality, it's structure. And it either thrives or decays based on 4 specific cornerstones: vision, mission, values, and human element. The Culture Health and Toxicity Assessment is a diagnostics tool that walks the deck of your organization and reveals exactly where the cracks are before you hit a storm and lose your best people. It's not about a score, it's about patterns. Where is your culture leaking? Is it a brilliant jerk you've tolerated? The hard conversations you've avoided? The gap between your inspiring vision and your misaligned execution? Once you see the pattern, you know exactly where to focus. And when your leadership team compares their assessments, the real work begins. Because that's when you surface the truth you've been avoiding. But here's the question I get asked most often after leadership teams complete the assessment. Okay, we see the cracks. Now how do we actually have the hard conversations that fix them without blowing up the team? That's what I'm covering in an upcoming video. Now that you understand the exact diagnostics I use to surface hidden cultural misalignments, you need to know how to facilitate the hard conversations that actually repair them. In that upcoming video, I'll show you exactly how to address the person you've been avoiding, reset the standard, and restore your team's faith in the system without it feeling like an execution. If you want to get ahead and take the Culture Health and Toxicity Assessment right now, go to MannyPalachuk.com/culture-assessment. It's free, it takes 15 minutes, and it'll show you exactly where your ship is taking on water. See you soon.